Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today I've got a Fountain Pen Showdown for you. We're going to take a look at the Wingsun 699 and compare that against the Pilot Custom 823. Now, I've got to be honest, the Wingsun 699, I think that's a clone of the 823. And before I got the 823, I did have a brown coloured 699, which let me experiment with the body shape because that 823's, it's a lot of money. Whereas the 699, I'm not going to say it's inexpensive, but it's a lot cheaper. So join me now down on the mat. Let's jump on in and compare these two pens. So here we are down on the mat. Time to jump on in and take a look at these two pens. So at the front, or for you on the bottom, we've got here the blue. This is the Wingsun 699. And then at the back, or on the top for you, we've got the Pilot Custom 823. Two very similar looking pens, but two pens that, to be honest, they are so different. The Wingsun 699, that was 35 Australian dollars. The Pilot Custom 823, that was 394 Australian dollars. Massive difference in price. But with that difference in price, can you see any difference in the way the pen performs? Let's take a closer look at these two pens. As I say, they're very similar, so I'm really going to focus on where there's differences. So in terms of length, they're roughly the same. If we look at the cap, let's fetch them both up. So we start with the dome. That comes down to a gold coloured or brass coloured ring. And from that ring, we come down into the clips. So one of the first differences we see is the clip shape. Here's a Wingsun. So that's more of what I would say, a traditional shape that we see in Chinese pens. Whereas here on the 823, at the top we've got the word Pilot. Then that's coming down and we've got this nice ball at the bottom. How springy are they? Yeah, that's nice and springy on the 699. The 823, this nib is a lot stiffer. I'm struggling to lift it up. It really doesn't bother me though, because I never put them in a shirt pocket. The only thing that really interests me, when I put it into my pen case, does it clip over? And with both of these, yes it does. So let me just turn these on the side. If we look here at the caps, again they're very, very similar. Obviously different colour. But size-wise, width-wise, they look virtually identical. We come down to the bottom, and again with the rings, we've got a thin ring, which seems to be thinner on the 699, and then we come down to the main ring. On the 699, we've got Wingsun 699 made in China. On the Pilot, we've got Custom 823. Don't know how well this is showing up on the camera. Custom 823. Pilot made in Japan. So again, even wording wise, they're very similar, aren't they? The caps, they both taper down, so there's a very small drop off down to the body, and I would say the drop off feels slightly deeper on the Pilot than it does on the Wingsun. The bodies, so we've got a translucent body on both of them, and they look again virtually identical. They're coming all the way down. We've got a ring at the bottom of the end finial. With the Wingsun 699, this is closed because this isn't a vacuum filler. This is a piston filler. There are vacuum filler 699s available, and they're the easier ones to get. I've found quite a struggle to get the piston version. Why I've got the piston version of this is the second Wingsun 699 I had. The first one was a vacuum filler, and I had nothing but problems with it. Really did. Really struggled with it. So much so, I actually put it in the bin, and it's the first time I've done that with a pen. It was just, I'm not going to say bad, it was just didn't work. Let's look at the 823 though. The 823, I've got this open. This is a bit of a blind cap. I'm just going to close that up. So that closes up. When it's closed, it seals off the section. I'm not sure if I can show you this. There we go. So there's it closed. I'm going to open this blind cap up now and just watch the bottom of the plunger. That's coming up and that's releasing that seal. So that helps if you're traveling, so you're not going to lose all your ink should there be an issue with the pressure causing the ink in the section to squirt out. For writing, I have this open. Again, it's got that seal. If it's not open, the ink in the section, you'll quickly write through that and then the pen goes dry. But it's one issue I do have. So I tend to usually leave this open all the time because then I don't need to worry that I'll forget it. And trust me, I keep forgetting it. And I'm writing, I'm in the middle of a word even usually, and it stops writing. So yeah, that's one thing to remember with this. Vacuum filler, not going to trigger the mechanism. As you can see, there is some ink in here. But you would open it up, you would pull this out, slowly push it back in. And as you're pushing it in, it creates a vacuum. When the plunger gets down to about where the top of my finger is, inside the barrel, it actually slightly widens, which then releases the vacuum that's built up, and that sucks the ink from the bottle and into there. Nice, simple mechanism. Really like this. I've filled this with 3 different inks so far and had no issues with that mechanism. Let's take the caps off. We'll start with the Wing Sung 699. So to take the cap off, half, 1, 1.5, 2, about 2.5 turns, and then off it comes. To do the same with the pilot, half, 1, 1.5. I would say about 1 3/4 for that to come off. And that reveals these nibs. And this is where the big difference comes in. On the Wing Sung 699, that nib is a steel nib. It's a nice looking nib. I like the two-tone effect on it, but it is a steel nib. The Pilot Custom 823, that's a 14 karat nib. Really nice. I know I'm jumping ahead here, but I love the nib on this pen. It's so nice to write with. It's all gold looking. Now this is something, I like the two-tone colours that you see on that 699. I'd have loved it if there was maybe some little bits of rhodium or something on the gold nib. To me, that just fetches out the gold colour more than anything else. Another difference between the two pens is when you look at the sections. To me, on this 699, the section is ever so slightly longer. The lip at the end also ever so slightly different. Not enough that it causes any issues, but it's something that I'm noticing. It's something that I see when I'm comparing these against each other. Let's pop these back on. Overall, I love both these pens. Very, very different, aren't they, though? I think this gorgeous brown colour here, I think this 823, it's the colour which fetches it out for me. I do like this blue. It's a nice blue, but I've got loads of blue pens, whereas I get very few of the brown ones. I love this brown pen. I love the transparent nature, so I can see the ink sloshing around in there. I know there's not a lot of ink in there at the moment, whereas on the Wing Sung 699, can't really see that ink moving about as much. Let's clear these off and we'll fetch in the rule of measurement. Okay, here's the rule. Let's do some measurements. So the first one, the 699. Its length with a cap on, 15 centimetres. Uncapped, 13.2 centimetres. Posted, 17.2 centimetres. And it posts very well. Nice and solid post in there. If we look at widths, the body, that's 1.28 centimetres. The cap is 1.49 centimetres. And then the section from the narrowest to the widest goes to 1.06 centimetres to 1.14 centimetres. Just going to pop that there. We'll keep it on camera. Why not? We'll look at the Pilot 823. I'm going to close the blind cap. We are, so that blind cap is now closed. Length, 14.8 centimetres. Ever so slightly shorter. Uncapped is 13.1 centimetres. Posted, That comes in at 16.3 centimetres, so posted definitely shorter. Again, posts really nicely. Whilst I've got that posted, let's take a look so we can see the difference. There's the two pens side by side. So that is a noticeable difference in that posted measurement. Close these up again. Widths, just pop that on there so we've got it. So the body, that comes in at 1.25 centimetres, so very slightly narrower. The cap is 1.49 centimetres, so the same as we see on the 699. And the section, again narrowest to widest, 1.06 to 1.13 centimetres. So that's within the margin of error for my measuring device. So width-wise, they're virtually identical. Let's swap this out and fetch in the scales of weighing. So here we are with the scales of weighing. We'll start with the 699, 23 grams. That's with ink in. The cap alone, 10 grams. And then the pen body, 13 grams. With the Pilot Custom 823, the whole thing, 30 grams. The cap, 10 grams. And the body, 20 grams. So again, just fetch them both back in. The 823, slightly heavier pen. In fact, the body alone is just a little bit less than the total weight of the 699. And again, when you're writing with it, I do notice I can feel the difference that little bit of extra weight makes. Let's shift this out of the way and we'll fetch in the notepad of testing. So here we have the notepad that I use for my pen testing. This is by Black and Red. There we go, Black and Red. Oh, you can't see that. There we go. Let's move that up so it's in camera. Black and Red uses the Oxford Optic paper, which is a really nice and fountain pen friendly paper. Let's just position this back where I want to start writing with. And let's jump in and do some writing. Our first pen is the Wing Sun. And it's the 699. I say this is a medium and steel nib. 35 Aussie dollars. The ink, well, strangely enough, what I've got in here is by Pilot, and it's Pilot Blue. This is actually the bottle of ink that came with the 823. I haven't had it in the 823 yet, but I thought, well, we've got a nice blue body, and I think the ink does suit it quite nicely as well. Let's look at drying times. Immediate. 10 seconds. Nearly dry there by the look of it. 30 seconds. Teeniest little bit of a smudge off the top. We'll go belt and braces, 1 minute. Yep, as we expect, that's nice and dry after 1 minute. I'm going to move the mic down to the page so you can hear the pen writing. That's a very stiff nib. You can certainly feel that. There's very little give in it. As we're writing, I'm not hearing a lot of noise, so there's not a lot of feedback coming off it. I can't feel the pen writing, so it's fairly smooth. Let's look for some line variation. So this is no pressure. I'm going to add some pressure. So with pressure added, I am getting a slightly wider line. Let's do my S's. There we go. As I say, it's a very stiff nib. Final test, let's look at the flow. Yep, that seems to keep up quite nicely. A couple of issues that I've noticed. Top of the 6, that was missing. And in my writing, the E here in make, that seemed to be missing. Now, I want to give this the benefit of the doubt. When I'm writing for these tests, I've got the paper and pen at an angle that I normally don't have when I'm writing, so that could affect it, although I don't think it has. I think these are where the pen's just skipped a little bit. But yeah, it feels nice. I expected that. Let's move the paper up. Time for the second pen. So, pen number 2 is by Pilot. And it's a custom 823. I can already feel the difference. It's a broad and it's 14 karat gold. Price wise, it was 394 Australian dollars. The ink, this is by Robert Oster. And it's Caffe Crema. Now, I've just noticed here I'm writing with that tab closed. This is what I was saying to you. I normally leave it open because I keep forgetting to do that. Drying times. Immediate. That looks a lot wetter already. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. Finally, 1 minute. There we go. After a minute, this one's still wet. And yes, I know what you're going to say. Gary, the different inks. So different inks also perform differently. So that's something we've got to bear in mind. But as a combo, yeah, this is fairly wet. Let's move the mic so you can hear the pen write. That's a lot softer. It's as if the nib is bouncing along the page rather than being pulled along the page. Not saying that the 699's writing experience is bad. This is just nicer. I'm loving all the shading I'm seeing. We'll come back and look at that in a second. Line variation. That's no pressure. This is with pressure. And the S's. So what I'm noticing, yes, we have got a wider line where there's pressure, but it doesn't look much different than what we saw on the 699. I am seeing a big difference though here where I'm doing the S's. Where I'm coming down, it's a lot wider than I was seeing on the 699. Lastly, we'll look at the flow. Again, that's nice. That flows really well. Looking at this writing though, just look at all this gorgeous shading we're seeing here. Virtually every letter, we've got some shading in it. It looks so nice to me. I like seeing shading in my writing because to me, it just adds interest to what I'm doing. It's a lot wetter. We can also tell that. Let me just reposition this. What I want to do is try and get some samples there from both the pens. Can I get them both together in the middle? There we go. The top we've got the 699. The bottom we've got the custom 823. So it's time to give these some scores. I love both of these pens. In terms of looks, I don't want to say that the 699 is a clone of the 823, but it's so close, isn't it? The nib makes a big difference. The writing experience, when I'm writing with these pens, on the 699, it felt stiff, whereas on the 823, it felt nice and soft. But saying that, I do wonder, am I seeing that because I'm writing with both these pens one after the other? In my normal day-to-day writing, I'm using one or the other. I'm not using one, then straight away going on to the other. So I don't notice it as much. I still enjoy writing with both of them. We did see a couple of little issues on the 699. Not enough to really make an issue with it. As I say, it could have been down to the angle I'm writing at. but it was an issue that I detected. We've got the gorgeous shading coming through with the 823, which I'm not seeing with that 699. Now, ideally, to do this test, I'd have the same ink in both pens because that's the best way to determine how it's going, because yes, the ink is a difference as well as the pen, but I'd find it boring having the same ink in all my pens. So I do run separate inks, and I just like to make sure you're aware that that could have an impact. Let's give this some scores though. The first score, this is around pen looks. As I say, they both look fairly close. I think the 823, with it being a more transparent colour, to me looks nicer because I can see the ink inside. Whereas with the 699, yes, it's transparent. Yes, you can see a little bit there. But the thing which I see most when I look at this is this piston mechanism, which takes up the top half there of the barrel. But looks-wise, they're so similar. So I'm going to give these both 9 out of 10. The writing experience. This is where I start to see a little bit of a difference coming in. That steel nib feels stiff. Doesn't have much of give. Doesn't have much line variation. As I say, with this ink, I'm not seeing much in the way of shading. I'm going to give that 8 out of 10. It's still a pleasant experience. With the custom 823, nice and soft nib. Nice shading. Nice line variation, especially here on these S's. It just looks a lot prettier. I'd say that's to my eye because I like to see that interest. I like to see that character coming out in my writing. So in terms of my writing experience, I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. Ink flow. So how well does the ink keep up? As I said, we had some issues here when I was writing. We didn't have that here with the 823. Yeah, it kept up nice, but it's a very thin line, whereas with the 823, that seems a wider line. It's broad nib, but it's a broad Japanese nib, but again, we're still seeing all that shading there. So in terms of ink flow, I'm going to give the Wingsun 699 an 8, and I'm going to give the 823, again, a 9 out of 10. Now the all-important score, value for money. This is one which I really struggle with all the time, because there's so much which goes into what people think as value for money. And what I think of it and what someone else thinks of it is likely quite different. 35 Aussie dollars. 394 Aussie dollars. So you can get 12 699s for the price of the 823. 14 karat gold nib. Nice, soft, gorgeous writing experience. Steel nib, stiff nib, but it still lets me get ideas out of my head and onto paper. So there's a lot to like about both these pens. Value for money wise though, I've got to look partly at the cost. This 823, that's the most expensive pen I have, and it was a gift. I would not have spent that much on a pen for myself. I really wouldn't. I would look at it and I would think, oh, that's a lot of money. I can get 12. You know, that's got to come into the calculation. So value for money, I'm going to give the 699 9 out of 10. I'm going to give the 823 8 out of 10. Which means my total scores for the 699 is 8.5 out of 10. And for that Pilot Custom 823 is 8.75 out of 10. So just slightly beating out the Wingsun 699. So these are my thoughts on these two pens. As I said, it's very subjective because this is what I'm seeing. This is why I try to use some standard tests just so you can see what I'm doing. I do a lot of other tests. I write on a lot of other papers with both of these. This is Oxford paper. I use Rhodia paper, Midori, a cheap notepad that I got from the local supermarket, Tomoe River 68 and 52 GSM. So I try it out on a lot of different papers. But for this video, that Pilot Custom 823, that comes out on top. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. What do you think about these pens? Which do you prefer? Do you prefer the 699? Do you prefer the 823? Please drop a comment down below. Let's kickstart the conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button every time you like, every time you comment. Just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.